This morning, the world witnessing extraordinary scenes in Israel. The first images of those 20 Israeli hostages turned over as family members cried and crowds by the tens of thousands erupted in applause. And there were cheers for President Trump touching down today in Israel to announce to the world the hostages have been released and continue his push for a path towards peace. The homecoming and the reunions of families torn apart for more than 2 years, the first stage of the U.S. brokered peace deal. President Trump meeting with them and marking this historic moment by writing in a book at the Israeli parliament, "This is my great honor, a great and beautiful day, a new beginning." As the hostages return home, there are more stages to come in the process. 2,000 Palestinian prisoners set to be freed. And humanitarian aid starting to flow into Gaza, where the devastation of the war is unmistakable. Back in Tel Aviv, relief for the...
Now, no matter what side you're on, I think is that we should be happy that that there is a ceasefire, and that the war seems to be coming to an end. Now, I don't know if it'll last long, but I would like to hope it would. That's what I'm thinking. Either on both sides. On both sides, you should be happy about this. The main thing holding up was the prisoners being released and the hostages being released. So that's what was stopping a lot of the ceasefires and everything like that. At least that's my thinking. But if I'm saying something wrong, let me know. If you disagree, if you don't think this is going to last long, let me know. Well, let's keep going into this.
Hostages returning home, but many still in mourning for those lost, like John and Rachel Goldberg Poland, whose son Hirsch was killed in captivity.
What are these families going through right now, the ones that are going to get both maybe their loved ones back, but also the remains of their loved ones?
It means a lot to be getting them back.
That's what we all have been fighting and hoping and praying over for 737 inexplicable, torturous days.
As for those 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, we understand that process has now started to release them. This was part of the phase one in exchange for those 20 living Israeli hostages, but there are still a lot of questions that are unanswered about phase two. What happens in Gaza? Who rules Gaza? And what happens to Hamas? Will they fully surrender? And if they don't, what happens next? But for now, Craig, this is a day of hope in Israel that so many have waited so long for.
A historic day indeed. Tom Llamas on the ground force there in Tel Aviv. Tom, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget.
Yeah, so right now, like I said, there's a ceasefire happening. Some people don't believe that it's going to last long. Some people think it's just going to be, it's not going to stop. Now, let me know your thoughts on that. Let's go over to this next video.
And we begin with breaking news on this Monday. Finally free. Israel and Hamas releasing hostages and prisoners today. 20 remaining alive Israeli hostages and nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners are officially home after a relentless 2 years of war. Good afternoon. It is a crucial step in the Gaza ceasefire agreement.
And today, President Trump received a momentous welcome for brokering this deal. ABC's Christian Cordero reports now the challenging work of rebuilding Gaza, along with maintaining the peace, begins.
Rob, Judy, this peace summit today included 34 leaders from 4 continents celebrating this crucial agreement and each vowing to help ensure it lasts. In Egypt today, with the world as witness, a symbolic signature and a vow to bring peace to the Middle East.
Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East, and it's a very simple expression, peace in the Middle East.
The first crucial step of a greater peace plan was put into action today, with Hamas releasing the 20 remaining living Israeli hostages and some of the bodies of the deceased hostages for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. President Trump insists the exchange has moved all parties onto phase 2, even though Hamas has not released all the bodies.
Phase 2 has started, and the phases are all a little bit mixed in with each other. We're going to start cleaning up. You look at Gaza, it's a lot of cleanup.
Not everyone in Israel agrees the deal is being upheld. The Hostage Families Forum is calling for an immediate halt to the agreement as Israel's defense minister accuses Hamas of violating the ceasefire by failing to return all 28 deceased hostages. Even so, the fragility of the deal is met with long-awaited relief on both sides of the conflict. For the 20 remaining living hostages, reunion after joyous reunion. 738 days in the making. And the roads inbound to Gaza today swell with truckloads of desperately needed humanitarian aid, plus buses full of nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, crowds huddled around their return home, or what's left of it. It's still unclear what phase 2 of this peace plan entails exactly. And when it comes to lasting peace, some of the challenges include figuring out the future of Hamas, who will govern the Palestinian people, and how Gaza will rebuild. In Washington, Christiane Cordero, Rob and Judy, back to you in Chicago.
Christiane, thank you. And while the last living hostages are finally home, others are still grieving loved ones lost. 23-year-old Hirsch Goldberg Poland of Chicago's north suburbs was one of the hundreds of people seized by militants at that music festival nearly 2 years ago. He and 5 others were murdered by Hamas. His grandmother says the family calls them the Beautiful Six.
I'm torn. I'm very sad that Hirsch isn't here, but thank God for the 20 or so families who can hug their relative and be joyful again.
And other hostages who are still in the midst of healing are Evanston mother and daughter Judith and Natalie Ranan. They were taken and then released by Hamas a few weeks after the October 7th attack.
But let's get over into this article that just brings a little more detail into it. A little more detail. As you know, we got to zoom in some so we can all see everything. All right. So it's been a monumentous day with scenes celebrating Israel's last surviving hostages returning home from Gaza after 2 years. Meanwhile, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees were released as part of the first phase of U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan. In the hostage square, emotional crowds waved Israel and U.S. flags and photos of the hostages as they watched their return. In what several described to BBC as a moment of national unity. There was anger and confusion later on when Hamas returned only 4 bodies, leaving 24 deceased hostages in Gaza. In Gaza and the occupied West Bank, there were tears and screams of joy as hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees were freed. The release involved about 250 prisoners who had been convicted of crimes including murder and deadly attack against Israel's, and about 1,700 detainees from Gaza who have been held by Israel without charge. The U.S. Donald Trump hailed it as a tremendous day for the Middle East as he visited Israel following by a trip to Egypt where regional leaders signed a document to cement his ceasefire deal. But questions linger about what happens next and whether or not the plans will lead to a path of lasting peace. Here in the hostage square, a clock keeps counting on the amount of days the hostages have been in Gaza, which many hope would switch it off today. It is still ticking. So as we know, like they said, right now it's a ceasefire, which I believe on both sides people should be happy with. The fighting should be stopped on both sides. No one else should be dying because of this war. But how long will it last? Some people are still emotional and clearly upset because they have not released 24 deceased hostages left that are still being held by Hamas. But we don't know what's in phase 2. I don't know if that's a part of phase 2, where the next phase was them releasing the last of the deceased hostages, or did they actually hold them back? But it sounds like all of the prisoners, 250 prisoners and 1,700 detainees have been released and returned back to Palestine. So let me know your thoughts, y'all. Let me know, do you think that this ceasefire will last long, or do you have no opinion on it? At the end of the day, I'm just happy some fighting is done. Hopefully it lasts long, but we just got to wait and see. We just got to wait and see. But let me know your thoughts on that whole situation. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said. It's a good day. It's a good day, but it still sounds like they still got more work to do. Like I said, let me know your thoughts on that whole situation. All right, everybody, remember this is AC